The street was still half asleep when the scream of an alarm shattered the morning calm. A man jerked awake, heart racing, breath tangled in panic. Sunlight slashed across his face, fierce and accusing. He turned to the clock, 7:05. He was late again. Not just late for work, late for everything that mattered. He sprang from the bed, feet hitting cold tiles, eyes darting across a room that looked like a battlefield. Dirty plates, crumpled shirts, scattered drawings, his daughter's drawings, strewn across the floor. A man who designed glass towers for a living couldn't keep his own walls from collapsing. From down the hallway came a small, trembling voice. "Daddy," it wasn't a call. It was a question, heavy with disappointment. He hurried toward it. Ima sat on the edge of her bed, her bag packed, her hope undone. "My uniforms are dirty." The words landed like stones in his chest. He had promised again and failed every time. He reached for her closet, found only a faded yellow dress. "Wear this, just for today." She took it without looking at him. Silence fell, thick, suffocating. In the kitchen, he cracked an egg, burned it, cursed under his breath. The smell of smoke filled the air. One burnt egg, one slice of bread, breakfast for a man and a child surviving on exhaustion. He placed the plate before her, forcing a smile. "Eat quickly, we're late." She poked at the food. "Daddy, I have a big test today." His chest tightened. He should have said something encouraging, but guilt had stolen his words. So he lied through a brittle smile. "You'll do great, you always do." The car groaned onto the highway. Traffic was madness. Horns screaming, tempers boiling, Lagos waking up angry. Ima stared out the window, her reflection small and sad against the glass. When they reached the gate, she opened the door without a word and ran toward her school, head bowed. He sat still, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. Around him, the city roared. Inside, only silence. A horn honked beside him. Femi's car rolled up, window down, voice sharp with concern.
"Aid."
"My guy, what's happening to you?" Moments later they were back in the apartment, where sunlight only made the mess look worse. Femi's eyes scanned the chaos, his voice low. "You look like a man still living inside yesterday." Aid dropped onto the sofa, buried his face in his hands. "I'm trying, Femi, but everything keeps falling apart." "Trying isn't enough," Femi muttered. "Ima's not smiling. You're not eating. You need help." "I don't need strangers in my home. Not strangers, helpers. My cousin runs an agency. Let her find you someone. You can't fight grief and fatherhood alone." Aid's shoulders sagged. The plates, the dust, the silence, they all answered for him. He sighed.
"Fine."
Find someone. That night, he cooked jollof rice with trembling hands, trying to make peace with a child who carried his sorrow. The aroma filled the room, warm but lonely. When Ima came home, she blinked in surprise. "You cooked." He nodded.
"Sit. Eat."
But she only pushed the food around her plate. Her voice came small, cracked by tears. "My friends laughed at me. They said my dress was ugly. They said my daddy forgot." He swallowed hard.
"I'm sorry, Ima."
"It won't happen again." Then came the dagger. "I miss Mommy." He reached across the table, gathered her in his arms. "I know, my love. I miss her too." She wept softly, tiny fingers clutching his shirt. He held her tighter, wishing love could wash guilt clean. That night, when the house fell quiet, his phone buzzed. A message from Femi. "I found someone. Her name is Grace. She'll come tomorrow." He stared at the glowing screen, thumb hovering, heart uncertain. Finally, he typed one word. "Okay." Morning broke uneasy. He worked from home, every tick of the clock echoing like footsteps toward change. At exactly 2, the doorbell rang. He opened it and froze. A woman stood there, calm as dawn after a storm. Mid-20s maybe, dressed in a plain blouse and skirt, eyes steady, kind. "Good afternoon, sir. I'm Grace." Recognition flashed. She was the same woman who had stayed with Ima one evening outside the school gate, when rain fell and traffic swallowed time. She had kept his daughter safe. He stepped aside. Come in. The interview was short. Her answers clear, her tone respectful. She had worked for 2 families before, both spoke highly of her. Why did you leave? He asked. They relocated to London, sir. My family is here in Nigeria. Her voice was soft but firm, like someone who had learned dignity from hardship. This job isn't easy, he admitted. It's just me and my daughter. The house, it's a mess. Grace smiled gently. Children don't need perfection, sir. They need love and consistency. I can help with that. Something in her words broke through his doubt. Without thinking, he said, You're hired. Her smile deepened, a quiet promise. The next morning began with chaos as usual, but this time, chaos met calm. Sir, she said lightly, please finish getting ready. I'll handle breakfast. He hesitated, and used to surrendering control. But there was something steady in her presence. He nodded. Minutes later, the smell of warm pancakes drifted through the room. Ima sat at the table, eyes wide. This is good, she murmured, mouth full. Grace laughed softly. Eat well, my dear. You'll need energy for that big test. Aid leaned against the doorway, watching. The scene was ordinary, too ordinary to explain why his throat tightened, but something inside him eased for the first time in months. That evening he came home to the sound of laughter, real laughter, pure and high. Ima and Grace sat cross-legged on the floor, playing Ludo. Daddy, look. I'm winning. Ima cried, grinning from ear to ear. He stood still, staring. The living room gleamed. The air smelled of stew and soap. For the first time since Stella left, the house felt alive. Grace looked up, smiling politely. Welcome home, sir. Dinner's almost ready. He could only nod. Because somewhere between that smile and Ima's laughter, he felt something he had forgotten long ago, hope. And as the night settled over Lecky, the man who once drowned in silence realized that maybe, just maybe, a stranger had brought the light back. Days passed, and the rhythm of the house began to change, like a tired drum that suddenly found its beat again. Grace moved through the apartment quietly, efficiently, never rushing, never loud. Her presence was like cool water poured over a restless fire. The mornings that once began with panic now unfolded in calm order. Ima's uniforms were washed, her hair neatly braided, her lunchbox packed with small handwritten notes. You are brave. You're smart. You can do anything. Aid noticed everything. The way Ima smiled now without forcing it, the way she hummed while tying her shoelaces, the way the house smelled of life again. Sometimes he would pause at the door before leaving for work and listen. Grace's voice in the kitchen, light and cheerful, Ima's laughter answering it. It was the sound of healing, though no one dared to name it yet. One evening, he came home early. The rain had just started, drumming softly against the windows. He stepped inside and froze. Grace was kneeling beside Ima at the dining table, patiently explaining a math problem. See this, she said, drawing tiny circles on a sheet of paper. If you group them like this, the answer comes easily. Ima's frown melted into wonder. Oh, I get it, she squealed. Grace smiled, pride glowing in her eyes. Aid stood in the doorway, his heart full. The gentle kindness in Grace's eyes was something he hadn't seen in a long, long time. He had seen competence before, people doing their jobs. But this was care. It was love disguised as duty. That night, after Ima was asleep, Aid found Grace folding laundry in the living room. He hesitated, then spoke. Thank you for everything you're doing. Grace looked up, startled. I'm just doing my work, sir. He shook his head slowly. No, it's more than that. You've brought peace to this home. Her smile was humble, quiet. Peace comes when love is allowed to breathe, sir. Maybe Ima just needed someone to listen. Those words stayed with him long after he went to bed. That night, for the first time in months, he slept deeply. Weeks passed, and the small apartment bloomed. Potted plants appeared on the windowsills, a faint scent of vanilla drifted from the kitchen each evening, and laughter became as common as breath. Aid started coming home earlier, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. One Friday afternoon, the sky darkened early with rain clouds. He finished work ahead of time and decided to surprise Ima by picking her up himself. As he unlocked the door, he heard a sound that stopped him cold, Grace's voice, soft and lilting, reading from a storybook. He stepped quietly into the living room. Ima sat curled up beside her on the sofa, her head resting against Grace's shoulder. The lamplight washed them both in gold. Grace's voice wrapped around the words like silk. And the brave princess lifted her head and said, "I will not be forgotten." Ima's eyes were wide, full of wonder. Grace smiled as she turned the page. Neither of them noticed Aid watching, motionless in the doorway. The scene was too perfect, too fragile. He didn't want to break it. For a moment, it felt like watching his own broken heart begin to beat again. Grace finally looked up, surprised to see him standing there. "You're home." Ima leaped off the sofa, running to him. "Daddy." Grace was reading me a story about a princess who didn't give up. He smiled faintly. "Seems like the perfect story for our house." Their eyes met, his and Grace's, and in that instant, something unspoken passed between them. A recognition. A warmth that neither could name but both could feel. That night, after dinner, they lingered longer at the table. Conversation flowed easily. Grace spoke of her small town near Ibiman, her love for books, her dream of one day owning a bakery. Aid listened, captivated. Her laughter, gentle, unforced, felt like sunlight after rain. Later, lying in bed, he realized something dangerous. He was starting to care. Really care. Not out of loneliness, but out of admiration. Out of gratitude. Out of love. But just as the light began to grow, darkness stirred again. The following week, while Grace hummed in the kitchen and Ima worked on her homework, the phone rang. Aid answered absent-mindedly. "Hello." A pause. Then a voice that froze his blood. "Aid, it's me." He almost dropped the phone. That voice, sweet, sharp, unforgettable. Stella. His ex-wife. The woman who had walked out without warning, leaving him to pick up the pieces. "What do you want?" His tone came out harsher than he intended. Her laugh floated through the line, brittle and practiced. "Is that how you greet your wife? You're not my wife anymore." "Oh, details." Her voice dripped with arrogance. "Anyway, I have wonderful news. I'm back in Lagos. And I want to see my daughter. Tomorrow." He gripped the phone so hard his knuckles turned white. "No. You can't just show up." The line went dead. He stood there, frozen. The peace he had fought to build shattered in a heartbeat. Grace appeared in the doorway, holding a tray of fruit. "Aid, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." His voice cracked. "She's back." Grace frowned, confused. "Who?" "My ex-wife. Stella. She says she's coming tomorrow." For a moment, silence thickened between them. Then Grace set the tray down gently. "You're afraid," she murmured, more observation than question. He let out a bitter laugh. "Afraid? I'm terrified. She destroyed everything once. And now she'll come and confuse Ima again." Grace stepped closer. "Then don't face her alone." Her voice was calm, her eyes steady. "Whatever comes tomorrow, you're not alone." Those words, simple, steady, wrapped around him like a prayer. That night, he couldn't sleep. He sat by Ima's bed, watching her small chest rise and fall, innocence untouched by the storms of adults. Grace passed quietly through the hall, adjusting curtains, checking doors, her presence a silent reassurance. When dawn came, the air itself felt heavy with dread. Aid told Ima that a visitor was coming, but not who. Grace moved about her duties with a grace, fitting of her name, but her eyes held the same tension as his. At noon, the bell rang. Aid's pulse thundered. He opened the door slowly. And there she was. Stella. Elegant, perfumed, polished to perfection. Time had not softened her, it had made her sharper. Her eyes swept the apartment with quick judgment. She murmured, stepping inside without invitation. "So this is how you live now? You must have hired help." Her gaze locked on Grace. The smile that followed was a blade. "You must be the nanny." Grace bowed slightly, silent and respectful. Before Aid could speak, a voice came from behind them. "Mommy?" Ima stood in the hallway, small and frozen, disbelief and hope warring in her eyes. Stella turned, the actress in her taking over. "My baby." She dropped to her knees, arms wide. "Come to mommy." Ima hesitated, then took a few uncertain steps forward. Stella enveloped her, raining kisses, but her eyes over Ima's shoulder were cold, calculating. "Oh, my poor baby," she cooed loudly. "You've been so brave living without me." Aid felt anger stir, but he bit it back. The air in the room turned sharp, brittle. Stella stood, brushing invisible dust from her designer dress. "You've kept the place clean." "Impressive." "I suppose that's her doing." She nodded toward Grace. Ima slipped behind Grace's leg instinctively, half hiding, small hand clutching the hem of Grace's skirt. The sight made Stella's smile falter. She tried to pull Ima back, but the child didn't move. Aid took a step forward. "Stella, maybe we should talk." "Yes," Stella agreed coldly, eyes never leaving Grace. "But first, tell the help to make us some tea." The words fell heavy, like stones in still water. Grace's face remained calm, but her silence carried dignity. Aid's voice came low. "Grace, please take Ima to her room." Grace nodded and gently led Ima away, her hand resting protectively on the girl's shoulder. As the door closed behind them, Stella's mask slipped. Her voice dropped to a hiss. "You replaced me." Aid stiffened. "You left." "I made a mistake," she whispered, eyes glistening with false remorse. "I want my family back." But Aid could see through the act now. Behind the makeup and perfume, there was nothing, no love, no regret. Only hunger for control. "Family," he said quietly. "You abandoned it." Her tone sharpened. "Then get rid of the nanny." "If we're going to start again, she can't stay." The room fell silent. Her words echoed inside his skull. "Get rid of Grace." But all he could see was Ima's laughter, Grace's patience, the peace that had returned with her presence. He looked Stella straight in the eye. "No." Stella blinked, surprised. "What?" "She stays." The single word hung in the air like thunder. "No." Stella blinked, taken aback for a moment, then her mask cracked. Her eyes flared with anger. "She stays? Aid, are you out of your mind? That woman is a stranger. She's manipulating you." Aid's voice was calm but firm, forged by months of silent guilt and recent peace. "She's not a stranger. She's the reason this home breathes again." Stella laughed, sharp, mocking. "Oh, so now you fall for the help? The maid who makes pancakes and braids hair? That's what you've become." But Aid didn't flinch. He had flinched too many times before. "Don't do this," he murmured. "Don't turn this into another performance." Her lips trembled with rage. "Performance? I am your wife. I am Ima's mother." "You were," he corrected quietly. "Before you walked away." Her voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "Then remember what I said. I'll be back for your answer. Choose wisely, Aid. Don't make the wrong choice." And with that, she turned sharply, heels clicking like a curse on the tiles, and stormed out of the apartment. The slam of the door echoed through the hall, heavy as final judgment. For a long moment, there was only silence. Aid stood still, breathing hard, the storm inside him still raging. Then from down the hallway came a small sound, a muffled sob. He hurried to Ima's room. The sight broke him. His daughter sat on the bed, tears streaking her cheeks, her tiny hands clenched around her pillow. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" Her voice came out trembling. "Is Grace leaving?" The question hit him like a spear. "What? Why would you think that?" "Because Mommy's back," Ima whispered. "And she said Grace shouldn't stay." "I don't want her to go, Daddy. She makes everything happy again. She makes you smile." Her words, so innocent, so true, pierced through every layer of confusion and fear. In that moment, he understood. It wasn't about Stella, or pride, or guilt. It was about love. Real love. The kind that stays when life falls apart. He pulled Ima into his arms, holding her tight. "No, my love," he whispered fiercely. "Grace isn't leaving. I promise." Ima's teary eyes lifted. "You promise?" He nodded, the truth steady in his voice. "I promise." When she finally fell asleep, He sat by her bed for a long time, watching her breathe, knowing what he had to do. The past had already taken too much. It would not take their peace again. But when he stepped into the hallway, the faint light from the guest room caught his eye. The door was half open. Inside, Grace was packing her things. "Grace," his voice broke. "What are you doing?" She froze, then turned slowly. There were tears in her eyes she had tried to hide behind a calm smile. "I think it's best if I leave, Aid. Your wife is back. I don't want to cause problems." He stepped closer, his voice trembling. "She's not my wife anymore. Not in heart, not in truth. And you're not the problem, Grace. You're the solution I didn't know I needed." She shook her head, torn between duty and emotion. "I don't belong here." "Yes, you do." His voice was steady now. "You belong here more than she ever did." Her eyes widened. "Aid." He took a deep breath, the words spilling from the place where fear had once lived. "When you came into this house, everything changed. You didn't just clean. You healed. You made my daughter laugh again. You made me believe in peace again. Grace, I love you." The confession hung between them, trembling in the quiet room. Grace's lips parted, her breath catching. "You what?" "I love you," he said again, stronger this time. "And I don't want you to be the nanny anymore. I want you to stay, as part of this family." Tears slid down her cheeks, her voice a whisper. "I love you too, Aid. From the very first day I saw your pain, and I prayed for you. But I never thought." He stepped closer, gently wiping a tear from her face with his thumb. "No more pain. Not if I can help it." And then, a voice, sharp as glass, cut through the moment. "What exactly is going on here?" They both turned, startled. Stella stood at the door, eyes blazing, hands on her hips. She had come back quietly, her anger burning hotter for being unseen. "So this is your choice, Aid?" "The help." Aid instinctively moved in front of Grace, shielding her. "Don't do this, Stella." "Don't what?" she sneered. "Don't react to betrayal? After everything we've been through, you're throwing it away for a maid." Her words spat venom, but Aid stood unmoved. "We've been through nothing but pain. You left us. You don't get to come back and destroy what we've built." Stella's laughter was bitter. "Built? With her? You've lost your mind." Behind him, Grace whispered softly, "Please, don't fight." But Stella was already advancing, eyes wild. "You think you can replace me with this woman? She stole my family." "No one stole anything," Aid said quietly, his voice trembling with truth. "You gave it away when you walked out that door." Stella's anger cracked, giving way to desperate tears. "I came back for you, Aid. For Ima. I made a mistake, can't you see that?" He looked at her, really looked. The expensive dress, the flawless makeup, the emptiness behind her eyes. And he realized, he felt nothing. "No, Stella," he murmured. "You didn't come back for us. You came back for yourself. Because you lost what you thought you'd find out there." At that moment, a small gasp came from the hallway. Ima stood there, eyes wide, clutching her teddy bear. Stella turned quickly, softening her tone. "Ima, my sweet girl, come to mommy. This woman is trying to take your place." Ima hesitated. Her small eyes darted between Stella, beautiful but strange, and Grace, whose trembling hand reached out in quiet fear. "Come to mommy," Stella repeated, voice almost pleading. The silence stretched thin. Then Ima took a step, slow, deliberate, and placed her tiny hand into Grace's. "I already have a mommy." The words fell like a sacred verdict. Stella's face crumpled, disbelief and pain warring across her features. "Ima," she whispered, voice cracking. But the child only held tighter to Grace's hand, her eyes full of innocent certainty. Aid's heart swelled with fierce, protective love. He looked at Stella, his voice calm but final. "You wanted an answer. This is it. Leave us alone." For a long moment, Stella stood there, trembling. Then her shoulders sagged. Her eyes darted from Aid to Ima, then to Grace. Something inside her broke. "Fine," she whispered. "Fine." And she turned and walked out for the last time. The door closed softly behind her. For a moment, the apartment was still. No one moved. Then Ima sniffled and looked up at Grace. Are you staying now? Grace knelt down, tears shimmering in her eyes. If your daddy wants me to. Aid stepped forward and placed a hand on both of them. I want you here. Always. They stood together, father, daughter, and the woman who had turned their mourning into laughter. Three souls bound by choice, not blood. The house, once cold and hollow, now felt alive, filled with the warmth of belonging. That evening, as they sat for dinner, the silence was peaceful. Ima giggled softly between bites. Grace smiled shyly, unsure of her place but hopeful. Aid looked at them both, heartful. This is what family feels like. Grace glanced up, her eyes bright. It's beautiful. Ima reached across the table, her small hand resting on Grace's. Can I call you Mommy now? Grace froze, tears threatening again. Aid smiled gently. Maybe start with Auntie Grace, Ima grinned. Okay, Auntie Grace. The name carried warmth and promise, a bridge between the pain of yesterday and the joy of tomorrow. That night, after Ima was asleep, Aid and Grace sat on the sofa in quiet reflection. The air was thick with the weight of everything that had been lost and found again. Thank you for staying, Aid whispered. Thank you for asking me to, she replied. He reached for her hand. I meant every word earlier. I love you. Her fingers tightened around his. And I love you too, Aid. He leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. The kiss that followed wasn't desperate, it was gentle, healing, like two broken souls finding home in each other. Outside, the city hummed quietly. Inside, peace breathed again. For the first time in a very long time, Aid felt whole. 6 months passed, and the apartment that once echoed with sorrow now sang with life. Morning light spilled across freshly painted walls, catching the shimmer of Ima's drawings taped proudly everywhere, bright suns, happy faces, and 3 stick figures holding hands. Aid, Grace, Ima. A family born not of bloodlines, but of love's second chance. The neighbors noticed the change first. They whispered about the laughter spilling from Aid's balcony, the smell of stew and fresh bread drifting down the corridor, the sound of a man humming on his way to work. The same man who once looked like a ghost now smiled at strangers. The same little girl who once hid behind shadows now skipped to school with her hair shining and her heart full. And at the center of it all was Grace, quiet, steadfast Grace, whose presence had become the heartbeat of their home. She still rose before dawn, still cooked, still tidied, but now every task was touched with something deeper. She was no longer working for them, she was living with them. Today, the house buzzed with a secret. Balloons dangled from the ceiling, ribbons fluttered from chairs, and the scent of cake filled the air. Aid moved quickly, his architect's precision showing even in decoration. Ima, bring the card, he whispered. Ima came running, clutching a large sheet of paper covered in colorful drawings. It's ready. She giggled, excitement trembling in her small hands. Do you think she'll like it, Daddy? She'll love it, he said softly. Then the door to the hallway creaked open, and there she was. Grace, dressed in a simple blue dress, her hair loose around her shoulders, her eyes lighting up at the sight before her. Surprise! Her hands flew to her mouth. Laughter burst out of her, the kind that trembles with disbelief and joy. Oh my goodness! What is all this? Aid stepped forward, smiling like a man who had found the sun after a lifetime of rain. It's your birthday, my love. She blinked rapidly. You remembered? How could we forget? Femi's booming voice came from the kitchen as he appeared holding a bottle of malt. The woman who saved this stubborn architect from self-destruction? We celebrate that kind of miracle. Everyone laughed. Even Grace. Especially Grace. Ima ran up and handed her the handmade card. On the front, drawn in thick crayons, were 3 stick figures under a bright yellow sun. Beneath it were the words, "To Auntie Grace, the best mom in the whole world. I love you." Grace knelt, tears spilling down her cheeks before she could stop them. Oh, Ima, her voice trembled. You made this for me? Ima nodded fiercely. You're my best mommy ever. Grace pulled her into a tight hug, her tears falling into the child's hair. And you, my darling girl, are the best daughter I could ever dream of. Aid stood behind them, his heart swelling until it almost hurt. Femi watched with a grin. You see? Even heaven claps for love like this. Later, after cake and laughter and gifts wrapped in shiny paper, Femi said his goodbyes, clapping Aid on the shoulder. I told you, my friend, when you let Grace in, everything changes. Aid smiled. You're right, brother. She didn't just change the house. She changed me. The evening melted into quiet. Ima fell asleep on the sofa, clutching her teddy bear and Grace's card. The balloons swayed gently above her. Aid turned off the main light, leaving only the soft glow of the lamp. Grace stood by the window, her eyes on the city lights beyond the glass. This is the happiest birthday I've ever had, she whispered. Aid walked up behind her, slipping his arms gently around her waist. It's just the first of many, he murmured against her ear. She leaned into him, her head resting on his chest. Do you ever think about how different everything could have been? Every day, he admitted. If Femi hadn't sent you, if you hadn't said yes. I don't know where Ima or I would be. She smiled faintly. God knew you needed help. And he sent it, disguised as a maid. He chuckled softly. No, not a maid. An angel. She turned to face him, eyes shining. An imperfect one, maybe. The perfect one for us, he said simply. Their lips met in a kiss that was not about passion, but about promise, quiet, deep, and sure. It tasted of peace. Outside, the night was full of soft sounds, cars in the distance, laughter from nearby flats, the steady hum of life continuing. But inside, the little apartment felt like the safest place in the world. Grace pulled away slightly, her gaze tender. Do you ever wonder if Stella will come back again? Aid's expression didn't falter. She might. But it won't change anything. The door she walked through has closed forever. I won't let the past steal our present. Grace nodded slowly. Then we'll keep building this new life, one day at a time. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. We already have. The months rolled by like pages in a storybook. Ima thrived at school, winning a handwriting prize. Femi visited often, his laughter echoing through their small but joyful home. Grace started baking on weekends, filling the house with the smell of butter and cinnamon. Sometimes, Aid would watch her from the balcony, her laughter mingling with Ima's, and he'd think, this is redemption. This is what Grace feels like when it wears human skin. One Sunday evening, after dinner, Ima climbed onto Grace's lap and looked up with wide eyes. Auntie Grace. Yes, love. When I grow up, I want to help people the way you helped us. Grace smiled, her throat tightening. Then the world will be a better place, my dear. Aid watched them, emotion heavy in his chest. He had built skyscrapers that touched the sky, but nothing as sacred as the home before him. That night, after tucking Ima into bed, he returned to the living room. Grace was sitting on the sofa, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea, her expression soft with thought. He sat beside her. You know, he said slowly, when I first met you, I didn't believe people like you existed. I thought goodness was something people pretended to have. But you proved me wrong. She looked at him, smiling gently. Goodness exists in everyone, Aid. Sometimes it just needs to be seen and loved. He nodded, his gaze steady. Then let me spend the rest of my life seeing it. Her breath caught. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. She gasped softly. Aid. He opened it. Inside lay a simple gold ring, nothing flashy, just pure and bright. Grace, he said quietly, you walked into my home when it was drowning in silence. You lifted me when I couldn't stand. You loved my daughter like your own. Will you marry me? Tears filled her eyes, spilling freely as she nodded. Yes, Aid. 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and for a moment, time itself seemed to bow in reverence. In the stillness that followed, Ima stirred in her sleep, murmuring softly from her room, I love you, Auntie Grace. Grace laughed through her tears. Did you hear that? Aid smiled. Even in her dreams, she knows. They held each other, the city lights glittering beyond their window like blessings from the night. And so it was that the man who had once been broken found wholeness, not in riches, not in perfection, but in love's quiet persistence. He had lost everything once, his wife, his confidence, his peace, but Grace had come like dawn after the longest night, not just to clean the dust off his home, but to clean the sorrow off his soul. When morning came, Ima woke to find them both in the kitchen, laughing over burnt pancakes. "Daddy can't cook again?" she teased. Aid pretended to gasp. "Excuse me, young lady, I'm improving." Grace winked. "Barely." And, just like that, the house filled again with the sound that had saved them laughter. Because family isn't who shares your blood. It's who shares your battles and still stays. It's who chooses you even when life doesn't. It's who walks in with light when the rest of the world walks out. And in the quiet, golden corners of a small apartment in Lekki, that truth lived and breathed in 3 beating hearts. So when you finish this story tonight, remember, every broken thing can be made new if love is allowed to do its work. Sometimes, healing doesn't arrive with thunder or crowns. Sometimes it comes softly, with a smile, a kind word, and hands that serve without asking to be seen. If this story touched something deep inside you, don't let it stop here. Share it. Let someone else remember that love still restores, grace still finds us, and family can be born from pain. Because somewhere, right now, another heart is waiting for a light, and your share might be the spark that leads them home.